In 1700, a noteworthy 10% of Japan's population resided in towns and cities, a level of urbanization that was remarkably high for the era. Despite enjoying substantial prosperity in the 17th century, Japan experienced an intriguing 150-year stretch of population stagnation and economic and social inertia following this period. From the 18th century onward, Japan's population remained static at around 25 million, presenting a stark contrast to the population growth witnessed in European countries during the same time frame. Had Japan followed the European trajectory, its population would have likely surpassed 35 million by 1850. Instead, the population was only a modest 26 million in that year. A striking occurrence during this period was the depopulation of major cities in Honshu Island's interior, with feudal strongholds being the most affected. Data from 37 significant hanboks indicates an 18% population decrease between 1700 and 1850. The latter part of the 18th century was particularly challenging, marked by a series of famines. The most devastating of these was the Tenmei famine, which was triggered by the Mount Asama volcanic eruption in 1783. This catastrophe was largely ascribed to agricultural failures stemming from decades of climate disruption and a persistent shortage of food. Farmers, in desperation, fled the countryside, with the northeastern part of Honshu Island bearing the brunt of the exodus. Additionally, infanticide emerged as a perplexing and deeply troubling phenomenon during this era. While the precise causes of infanticide remain nebulous, it was not unusual for rural families, irrespective of the child's gender, to abandon or even kill their unwanted babies. Contrary to popular belief that infanticide was a desperate form of birth control among impoverished farmers, it was actually more prevalent among wealthier households. This can be attributed to fears that continuous land division, spurred by population growth, would eventually lead to the family's inability to sustain themselves. Even more distressing was the escalating death toll due to disease and starvation. In order to survive, individuals were forced to consume bark and weeds, resorting to measures that could scarcely be imagined in normal times. Deaths were so widespread that peasants often had no choice but to immediately bury their deceased without official authorization, due to the sheer magnitude of the situation. This crisis fueled widespread dissatisfaction within Japanese society. The ruling samurai bureaucrats interpreted the widespread famine and rampant infanticide as a sign of moral failing among both the rulers and the ruled. They believed the root cause of these ills to be the failure of the elite to exhibit sufficient benevolence, which would have allowed for the survival of the peasants. The prevailing sentiment was that the elite had neglected their duty to uphold and disseminate the doctrines of benevolence, righteousness, courtesy, wisdom, and trust, a failure that had grave societal consequences.